Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it's 40 degrees and raining and windy for the second straight day. Happy May, everyone. Everything's going great.
Is this May or December?
It was, I think, the first week of March. My softball team was practicing outside because it was 70 degrees and sunny. So we are getting the lousy smarch weather in May instead of in March, and whatever. Like it all kind of evens out in the end. But I would prefer a more gradual upward trend in the weather as opposed to the roller coaster that we're on right now.
And honestly, I wouldn't even mind the temperature if it weren't for the rain and the wind that is really just ruining everything. But I'm not here to complain like a 70-year-old woman. I can do that off the air. Tom reminded me I got to give you a call. I've got a lot of complaining to do. My sciatica acting up. But we will get the show started. And on Saturday, this past weekend, Jordan Lyle, 4-star running back out of St. Thomas Aquinas, committed to Ohio State, the same school that gave Ohio State, I believe, only Trayvon Grimes.
There may have been a couple defensive linemen of note, but it has been a hot minute. St. Thomas Aquinas used to be a pretty significant talent pipeline for Ohio State, and then just kind of dried up after Trayvon Grimes in 2017, I believe.
Yep.
But it is. They are back on the St. Thomas Aquinas pipeline. That is probably a very good thing from a talent perspective for Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a place you don't ever want to just ignore, and eventually there will be players there worth having that don't want to go to Florida or Miami or Florida State, and who could blame them? An interesting thing about Jordan Lyle, who is ranked all over the place. He's listed as 6 foot 190, and this is to give you an idea of the recruiting rankings. Rivals has him as the number 49 running back in the nation, the number, I think, 99 player in the state. ESPN has him the number 37 running back. 24/7 has him as the number 32 running back. On3 has him as the number 5 running back. So somewhere between 5 and 49 is where you might want to rank him for Ohio State's purposes. He was plenty high enough to take the offer and take the commitment. And he had all of the offers you would expect an Ohio State target running back to have, and I think Georgia, Alabama, those guys, and Miami, Penn State, Florida, others like that. But a pretty quick, fast guy, and now Ohio State has 2 asterisk, possibly 3 running backs committed in the class. Tom, your thoughts?
Yeah, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Sounds like the number 49 running back in the country to me. Mm-hmm. Yep, starting for St. Thomas Aquinas. Yeah, sounds right. And also, let's check in what ESPN says, because that typically corresponds very closely to actual reality. So yeah, I'm going to guess. I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that Jordan Lyle's final recruiting ranking and also college production is probably going to align a lot closer to the number 5 running back in the country than the number 49 running back in the country, but what do I know? One thing I do know, as you said, this is probably 2-ish running backs in the class. The question then is, you've got James Peoples, you've got Jordan Lyle, there's your 2. Sam Williams-Dixon out of Pickerington North. He is the 2-ish, and he is listed as a running back. He has been sort of recruited as a running back, but he feels like he's more of, they're looking at him maybe a little bit as an athlete, maybe to fit that Xavier Johnson kind of role on offense, where a little bit of running back, a little bit of wide receiver, a little bit of whatever, just give them a little bit of a different type of weapon there. So, this is 3 running backs in one class would be pretty much unprecedented. I think we talked about that the last time we talked about this, and, that's, potentially the first time in 30 years or something, if it does end up really being 3 running backs in a class. But realistically, it's two into someone else who's going to be an offensive skill player, and you'll sort of see where he slots in.
The interesting thing is, usually the guy who is listed as the athlete is the scat back type, the 5'10", 185, something like that. But Sam Williams-Dixon is like the heaviest of them. He's listed at 5'11", 203. James Peoples is like 192, and depending on who you ask. Jordan Lyle is between 180 and 190. So it's just interesting that you've got a bigger guy who is, maybe you remember Noah Brown was a kind of a running back hybrid in high school. And he was obviously a big dude, came to Ohio State at like 240 pounds and never really got off of that. But I keep saying I can't wait to see how Pickerington North uses him. Although I expect them to use him as a running back because that's what the high schools do. But just to see his overall game and see how it fits. We did talk about this, I think, maybe on a morning show on Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning about how the last time they had 3 running backs committed. And I went back to 1992, and I didn't go every year from here till 92. I just went back into the early 90s because that felt like the sweet spot. And they had Eddie George and Travis McGuire. Those were 2 scholarship guys. Lou Willard was also in that class, but I don't know if he walked on or if he was a scholarship guy. But that was really one of the only ones I could find 3 guys in a class. You had, back in the late 80s and early 90s, Robert Smith and Butler Benote were in the same 1990 class. 1989, Raymont Harris and Dante Lee were in the same class. And like all of those guys end up pretty much on the team together. And like 1992, when Robert Smith came back, and you just have like 1,000 running backs. And Eddie George starts fumbling the ball and they have a total bust. Probably should have played linebacker from the outset, like Joe Paterno said. But while I was doing this, the interesting thing, to go away from running backs for a second, 1990, Ohio State signed 3 running backs, and they were all like high school legends. Preston Harrison, Bo Pickens, and Johnny Mattress in Ohio. And Preston Harrison gets hurt, becomes a linebacker. The Bo Pickens and Johnny Mattress were like, the Cleveland legend, I believe, and the Cincinnati legend. And this is why you should sign 3 quarterbacks every single year, because one of them ends up as a linebacker, the other 2, he's kind of washed out a little bit. One Joe Pickens ended up at Duke, I believe, so not so bad.
Yeah, Johnny Mattress was one of those. That was before I was following Ohio State football in any meaningful way, and that was a name that showed up on the Ozone board at some point in the late 90s that I looked at and thought, is someone doing a bit? Was there actually a kid named Johnny Mattress at some point? That seems extremely fake. Like there was a scene in Frasier, topical reference coming, topical reference ahoy. Wow. There was a scene in Frasier where Niles asks Frasier to name a baseball player, and Frasier says Darryl Strawberry, and he goes, "Oh, come on, say a real name." And that was me reacting to Johnny Mattress as a former Ohio State football player. But yes, apparently real, not the most productive. But fortunately, a couple of years later, they had the Travis McGuire class, and it all worked out okay.
I thought Travis McGuire was going to be very, very good. I do remember him having one long run in his career. Eddie George, arguably better than Travis McGuire in that class. But other than that, like I'm sure somebody will chime in. Oh, what about the 2013 class? It's like, oh, I guess I forgot about Ezekiel Elliott and Dontre Wilson. And
2013 was the year that they had, I think, 3 players with 100 yards in a game. I think that was when Boom Herron would have been before that. There was a game where Braxton Miller and Carlos Hyde and Boom Herron all ran for 100 yards in a game against, I think, Indiana. That was the 3-headed running back thing that they did back then. I don't think they've had a class with 3 running backs since then.
And again, my claim to fame, I predicted that one on the Ozone, that there'd be 3 100-yard running games in that game, which was, I think, maybe the 3rd or 4th time in school history. So have I rested on my laurels since then? Perhaps.
Has it been a decade of you just kind of coasting on that and not ever predicting anything else correct or bold? Yes. Also, yes.
Tom, did I tell you that I got a 45 on the Wonderlic?
I think that came up at one point. Hey, did I tell you that I predicted that you would mention that every show from now on until the end of the heat death of the universe? Yes, in fact, I did.
So now I have to stop just to prove you wrong. I'll just skip it for one show.
Wow, that'll show me.
So now Ohio State with 13 commits in the 2024 class, and probably about halfway done because it's going to be a big class. And at some point, you got to start adding some defensive players, in my opinion. Like at some point, defensive line, linebackers, have to be addressed. Although you've got Peyton Pierce and Garrett Stover as linebackers, perhaps another coming, and then you got to keep building up that defensive line. But hard to argue with the response of missing out on Mark Fletcher in 2023, which he wouldn't have had much of a role this year anyway, and then overloading with running backs in 2024 because you're going to be you could be losing a significant number of backs in 20 after this season.
Right. You sort of assume you're going to lose Mayan Williams. You assume you're going to lose Chip Trainum. Those guys are both. I have not gone back and double checked the COVID eligibility, which it's impossible to track at this point. But you sort of assume you're probably losing those two guys. They both are about done. And then, you're starting to see Travion Henderson's name pop up in first round mock drafts. And we can have a whole separate conversation about the utility of 12-month out mock drafts. But, you could potentially be losing three guys. And if you do, you've got 5 scholarship running backs this year, which is, five returning scholarship running backs, which is a lot. But if you lose 3 of them, all of a sudden it's Evan Pryor and it's Dallin Hayden. And if one guy gets hurt or one guy ends up transferring or whatever, then you're really thin. So yeah, the 2024 class of running backs coming in to just have the pair and a spare, even if both those guys are back, if you lose the 3, a pair and a spare is going to be the 2 returning guys and one of the true freshmen, and then the second true freshman is the 4th running back. And that's kind of more typical of an Ohio State running back room. 4 to 5 scholarship guys, including a true freshman. So they're a true freshman in 2022 would not have played a whole heck of a lot. A true freshman in 2023 would not have played a whole heck of a lot. A true freshman in 2024 could be someone who's getting on the field a decent amount fairly early.
And Travion, Mayan Williams, and Chip Trainum all have one more year if they want after this year because Chip and Mayan were 2020 class members, so that year doesn't count for them. So they would have one more year after this, but you can't assume everybody's going to come back. That's why you've got to bolster your room as much as you can. And then if some guys come back, either you accept them or you say, you know what? There's the portal. Not that I'm expecting them to tell anybody to hit the portal. Tom, speaking of the portal, Ohio State, it has closed. Now everybody is doing their counting, and people are asking me, so nothing else can happen from here on out, right? And no, players can leave anytime they want. Like grad transfers can leave. Commencement is this weekend. So there could be some Buckeyes who are graduating and perhaps entering the portal at this point, and they wouldn't have to as being grad transfers, they would still be eligible, so that they didn't have to hit this May 1st, April 30th window. And as I've said before, when was the last time Ohio State told a transfer, try to keep a transfer from being eligible? They will sign whatever waivers are requested, assuming a player is moving closer to home or whatever the excuse is for needing a waiver. But right now, Tom, did you do a scholarship count? Because I did, and I just wonder if we're at the same number.
I have not done a deep dive. I know they have been around 4 over. I think they were 4 over, and then they added Lorenzo Styles and Josh Simmons, and then they lost Caleb Brown. So are they 4-ish over, 4-5 over now?
They are, what I have is they were at, I have them at 86, and that is losing Caleb Brown, Caleb Burton, adding the Josh Simmons and
Lorenzo
Styles, losing Ben Chrisman, the constant fluctuation here. And so that's where I have them now, and I'm 52% confident in that. And I've got the roster here. I've counted it, and that's where I am. And that's with long snapper John Froman on scholarship. Not knowing if that is the case or not. That's with still having Avery Henry as part of the scholarship. Not sure if there's some hardship that they can do until he comes back. But I don't think they're as bad as other teams. And, of course, they're looking to still add Taiwan Malone and possibly another defensive back. So there's still going to be some movement, I guess, is the gist of what I'm saying.
Well, and if you're wondering why I don't know the exact count right now, it's because ask me how concerned I am that they'll be at 85 when they need to be at 85, because the answer is none. None concerned at all. It is, this is one of these things where, the sort of shorthand for this is the numbers always work out. And that was, that was an old Urban Meyerism that, hey, that always kind of works out. And this is how it is. There are teams that are way over. I'm trying to remember which one it was. There was someone that was at like 92 or 93 or something like that. I might have been someone in the SEC.
Oh, but really?
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, set your faces to stunned. And then there are teams like Colorado that were in the 60s, I think, like basically had an FCS roster. Those are both, okay, you're going to have to do a lot of finagling. If they're at 86, even if you add two more, okay, three people, you're going to have grad transfers. You're going to have medical hardship folks. I mean, there are people that have had chronic and repeating injuries that could end up on medical hardship. There are people who are, if you've graduated, as Tony said, it's very easy to get a grad transfer. You don't need to worry about the transfer portal. If you are waiting on, if you are looking for a waiver, they're going to give you a waiver almost certainly. That's just that. I don't think this is something that is nearly as much of a concern as the constant sort of drumbeat about it. It would sort of lead you to believe, every time they take a transfer, you get people wondering what's the number right now. And the answer is the number doesn't matter right now. They're very close, and it won't be an issue to be anywhere, at or below 85. I think there's a better chance, Tony, that they are two below 85 by the time it actually matters than it is that they are, and that they give a walk-on a scholarship or something like that, as opposed to they're, hey, they're over and there's a big problem on August 1st.
Yeah, and that's why we don't normally talk about numbers, because it always does work out. However, people keep asking, so it's like, okay, well, let us address this. Let us talk about it, because no matter how many times we say it doesn't matter, there are still concerns from people. Like, what? I had somebody at us, I think somebody DM'd me or emailed me, or what's the penalty for being over? And it's like, I used to know this maybe in like 2011 when oversigning was a thing, like what the penalty was. And so I'm Googling, and it's like, you can't even find any mention of a penalty for being over 85, or, from whatever searches I used, because it doesn't happen. Like, it's, you hear, that's why you hear about players being told that they no longer have a scholarship, or, as 2 weeks before camp opens, because it's, nobody goes to camp with over 85. And so there's no penalty for it. There is, but there's no discussion of it, or there's no proof of it, because nobody ever actually commits that. And I see there's also been speculation that maybe Lorenzo Styles pays his way for the first semester, which wouldn't be, it's kind of like gray shirting in a way, where, you're part of the next class, but you've enrolled in school, but you for the first semester, and then you go on scholarship in the winter. And with NIL right now, anybody can cover that for, like anybody would be able to, anybody. Travion Henderson would be able to cover the costs for Sonny Styles, or for Lorenzo Styles and Sonny Styles, frankly. But there are avenues, and it's just interesting to me that all of this concern and speculation, and like Ohio State's going to get destroyed because Texas A&M and Alabama and USC will pay to have walk-ons, like these 5-star guys to walk on. And I don't think you're ever really going to see that, because we haven't yet. But it's interesting to me that like maybe the first guy to actually walk on would be an Ohio State guy. And again, just speculation. It's been talked about a little bit out there. I just think it would be interesting if all of the gnashing of teeth about how this is going to hurt Ohio State, if like the first guy that does it is Lorenzo Styles Jr.
Well, I think you got to remember, this is something that is probably much more an around the edges thing, where, okay, you're coming on and he's not walking on forever. Probably it's probably, for one semester, like you said, and you make it up with NIL, and, he can talk to his younger brother, who probably is doing just fine on the NIL front as well, and say, hey, can you lend me a few bucks to pay for tuition? His dad will say, you're grounded if you don't give your brother money to pay for his tuition this semester. There's the solution right there. Good parenting. This is just one of these things that this is going to be like an edge case. You're not going to see. I think you get people who look at this and immediately take it to the extreme. It's like, oh, they're going to have, Alabama's going to have 125 players, scholarship caliber players, and they're just going to be paying a bunch of them NIL. Okay, let's think this through for a minute. If you're giving someone NIL and you have 125 players, how many of them are actually going to play? Okay, how many of your boosters are going to be willing to pay, whatever significant amount of NIL for guys who are very clearly not going to see the field for a season or two, and a bunch of them are going to not pan out. And you've seen with Texas A&M the big NIL first year class, and then the guys don't play because they're freshmen, and then they leave, and then where are you exactly? Like this just doesn't feel like something that is going to, other than sort of like very edge cases where you could always get kids to gray shirt. That Alabama used to get kids to gray shirt. Ohio State, Todd Beckman gray shirted when Todd Beckman came to Ohio State. I mean, you would have certain edge cases where people were willing to do it, and long term it worked out for them. But by and large, that's not going to be a sustainable thing where all of a sudden Georgia has 125 guys who are scholarship caliber guys. That's just not going to happen.
And whatever, and again, this is complete speculation. Don't take this as this is happening. But in terms of like whatever money you can get from NIL to cover your scholarship, it's nothing compared to what you can get if you're playing and making a name for yourself on the field. And I think that's one of the things where if you're not playing, like look at Caleb Brown, not playing, transferred from Ohio State, wide receiver, the opportunities weren't there for him this year, he felt, and certainly weren't there last year as a true freshman. And it's not getting any easier to play, but he wants to play, he can play, so you go somewhere else. And whatever he was making at Ohio State, if it was, you assume there's a baseline that certainly if you want something, you can make something, but it's small beans compared to what you can make if you are at a sizable place on the field, making plays. There's me on Sports Center, that sort of thing, to broaden your brand, Tom. It's about brands now. Did you know that? It's not about State U or doing, whatever. It's about your brands and helping your families, and it's just the worst thing ever.
The kids with their hip hop and their baggy shorts and their brands. I tell you, back in my day, Tony, just the football players just wanted to go play their football and then go to class and then maybe take their best girl to go get a malted down at the malt shop. And that's how college football still should be. And frankly, in my heart, Tony, always will be.
And I still always tell the story about seeing Rob Murphy at at Panini's working behind the counter because it had been a fun night for him, and he's just handing out sandwiches to people who had also had a fun night. And that's the college that I know. Somebody working for free where they shouldn't be, and they weren't looking for money.
The exact opposite of how the old no-show job typically worked in at some schools. Yes,
See? Back in my day,
instead of not showing up and pick up a paycheck, you show up and you don't pick up a paycheck. That's ethics, Tony. That's what that is.
The kids back then worked until 3:30 in the morning until the bars closed. Putting their hours in. Not today. Not today. They don't.
And with their iPhones and their skateboards and their hippity hop. Yeah, Tony, I tell you, kids today.
Some of them have Zunes. I've seen the Zunes.
Not enough, if you ask me.
So Ohio State will be down to 85. Don't worry. It's like the scene from Dragnet where all of the kids are looking at the lion that had his mane cut off, and Tom Hanks said, it'll grow back, kids. The numbers will be there, kids. Don't worry. They'll cut the numbers down and it'll be fine. No worries about punishments. Ohio State will be fine. If they're at 86, they're not, no postseason for you. Well, we didn't want to cut the long snapper.
Yeah, TV ban. That's what I've heard. They're gonna ban them from appearing on TV and cost all their TV partners millions of dollars. That's what I'm hearing. So probably how it will shake out.
Yeah. What would actually happen is like, you know what? The limit is now 86. That let's just do that. Help everybody out. But it is interesting because the number kind of governs itself because now players have the freedom to leave. And honestly, with that freedom comes a huge difficulty to actually get to that number because you have to bring in more than 85 because you also have to anticipate losing guys. And if you don't bring in more than that 85 and you end up with 80, coaches feel like they are at such a disadvantage. Like, oh my gosh, I only have 80 guys. What am I ever going to do? How am I ever going to compete against a team with 85? Even though those other 5 are freshmen who are stashed in a closet somewhere, overcoming a concussion. But still, like you have to go over so that you can be at that number when guys leave.
Right. That's the thing. That number, that 85 has become more of a moving target than it used to be. And, the actual number 85, guess how many players they travel for road games? Not 85. What is it? 72, 74, something like that. I mean, it's just, there are plenty of guys who are on scholarship who don't travel to road games. So, and a lot of those are sort of developmental positions, first year offensive linemen who are third team. A lot of times you're not going to road games and, so that's not materially going to impact this year's team, but those are, sort of developmental projects for next year and whatever. But yeah, you just basically, you don't want to be working at a significant disadvantage. And so that means in order to have 85 at the beginning of the year, you might have 86, 87, 88, because there are guys who are going to leave. There are guys who are going to get hurt. There are guys who are going, life happens. And you look at the roster turnover for pretty much every school between, the end of spring ball and the start of the actual season. Virtually no one has the exact same roster from, during that, whatever, 5-month span or 4-month span, whatever it ends up being. It is just sort of the reality of the situation right now. And there are plenty of good things about the transfer portal in terms of giving the players more agency. It can lead you to getting guys shoved out the door to make your numbers. And that happens pretty much everywhere. I think people looked at the Deion Sanders thing at Colorado and are like, what? How can you do that to players? It's like, well, the only thing that's different right now is that the cameras are on. That's really kind of the reality of college football at a national level. That's just that kind of happens, not usually to that magnitude and not usually on camera. But when we talk about tough conversations that people are having or the spring awakening that guys are having, that's what that looks like. And so it is just sort of the reality of the situation right now. And the days of Jim Tressel leaving spring ball at 82 because he knew he was going to give 3 walk-ons a scholarship or something like that, those days are probably gone. Now you leave spring ball at 86, 87, 88, whatever it is, and you recognize, okay, you're going to have guys enter the portal, and then if you're at 85, okay, and then if you're at 83, okay, then you can have that walk-on scholarship thing. But that's, the intentionally being a couple short, that's just a thing of the past.
Dabo at Clemson was asked about his numbers, and he said, we're at 88 right now, and if we have to get down, we'll just remove the scholarships that we've given to walk-ons, because we told them at the time, we can't promise these for the length of your stay. And I saw people very upset about that, but that's, to me, makes the most sense. Like that's, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're telling a player, look, we're giving this to you as long as we can. So I have no problem with that. The other thing with like first year coaches, the NCAA rule is like you can cut players. They're allowed to stay on, scholarship, but they're not going to count against your 85, and they're not going to be on your team. Lincoln Riley did that when he got to USC, made a bunch of cuts. Deion Sanders has done that, but like you said, it's being televised by Deion himself. It's a long way away from the days of where, and maybe the Big Ten still has this rule. I don't know. But if you're going to be over 85, you had to have like in writing how you were going to get down. And it couldn't be because we're cutting this guy because he's not good enough. It had to be like, he's got an injury. We know we're going to medical hardship him, or this guy is transferring after graduation, that sort of thing. It had to be like, that's how stringent it was. And I I honestly feel like that has been thrown out the window. Even before COVID, I think it was probably thrown out the window. But you remember like when Urban would be asked about numbers. I don't really know, where numbers are right now. And it was a more, the topic was brought up more back then. Now, as you said, I don't know why people, I know why people bring it up. I think they need to get out of that old thinking and don't concern yourself with the numbers. Like if you don't concern yourself with Ohio State wants this many running backs in a room, Ohio State wants this many receivers. Like if you don't concern yourself with those numbers and whether or not they're hitting them or not, don't concern yourself with 85 because they're going to get there. It always happens. And now that players have agency, the power is with the players to leave. And I wonder if with that in mind, could we see the scholarship numbers rise at some point, or is it a good spot right now? Because you can only have so many guys before they start going off on their own. Yeah,
I would not expect colleges to take on additional scholarships. I mean, you got to remember that would be the NCAA making a change. Who is the NCAA? Well, the NCAA is the university presidents and the schools. So when you listen to schools talk about things right now, do you frequently hear them complaining, there's too much money here. I don't have room for my desk. It's just stacks of money. It's like the storage unit in Breaking Bad. Like there's a lot of complaining about not wanting to, not having the money to pay for facilities and stuff because money getting siphoned off for NIL because the donors are giving money to the school or the NIL collective, and more money is getting siphoned off to that. So they still have to pay for facilities. They still have to pay for all the other sports that are mandated by Title IX. You have to pay for this rowing team is still on scholarship. The fencing team is still on scholarship. The field hockey team is still on scholarship. You're paying for all of those. I would be very surprised if you saw a change in scholarship numbers under the current NCAA setup, let's say, current FBS setup. Now, if this becomes a big two, little everything else thing, and the SEC and the Big Ten at some point really do make some kind of material change where all of a sudden, okay, it's 20 teams per league, it's 24 teams per league, and really FBS is just these two leagues. At that point, yeah, maybe, I don't know. We'll see what the sport looks like right there. Under the current structure of the sport, I would be fairly surprised if you saw all of the Power 5 schools, because you got to remember, it's not just Ohio State and Alabama. It's Washington State. It's Vanderbilt. It's Arizona State. It's Wake Forest. Do all of those schools want to add more scholarship football players to their and that's just one more thing one more light item you got to put on the budget and you got to pay for, with the general trend in athletics being that, it's more money in TV for the Big Ten and the SEC. The ACC is not making more TV money right now. They're making what they're making. Ticket revenue is what it is. You're not willingly taking on additional expenses right now, I don't think, on an, FBS wide level, even a Power 5 wide level, to add scholarships at this point.
I would say go ahead and move it from 85 to 95. But what you could do is you could just bring college baseball down from 11.7 scholarships to 1.7. So you're not adding anything. You're just taking it from somebody else.
Yes, the old line from Take Me Out to the Ball Game, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. That will be what your scholarship is, because it's 1.7 scholarships divided among 40 players on the team. You each get a semester's worth of peanuts and Cracker Jack. And frankly, at that rate, we don't care if you ever come back.
And you have to share textbooks. It's just one textbook per team. Make sure you take the same classes, or else it's going to be difficult. Anything else, Tom, before we get out of here?
Nope. Think we are good. Just everyone relax. They will be at 85. Everyone, not just Ohio State. Everyone will be at 85 when they need to be at 85.
I don't think Colorado will.
Well, everyone will be no higher than 85. How about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. So that will do it for this episode. I want to thank you all for joining us. As a reminder, please find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Say hello to us there on the message board right now. Mark Givler is having his all-day chat. I think I'm gonna stop in and try to ruin things a little bit. say, what's going on in here? Try to mess up the room, that sort of thing. Also, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Go ahead and subscribe there. You can also find us on Facebook. If you're a Facebook person, just search for Buckeye Huddle. Find us there. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow there, and we would appreciate that as well. So we're Instagram as well. I mean, we're everywhere except for TikTok and several others. But find us on your social media platform of choice if you like. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.